For a guy who seems to have the world at his feet, in every single picture you see of Ben, he looks absolutely miserable. But I think I figured out the reason why. For 2 decades now, Ben Affleck's been one of the biggest movie stars on the planet. And now he's a megastar. And you would think at this point he would be maybe a little bit happy, but every single picture you see of him, he looks absolutely miserable. And it's not like that you just say, well, that's his personality, because if you look at him back in his earlier years, he always seemed to be having a good time. He always seemed happy. He always seemed like a normal guy. And people say, well, life happens. Well, yeah, but he's still got a lot going for him. And for him to be that miserable, it seems kind of odd. Someone posted a comment that says money and fame doesn't create happiness, and that's absolutely true. But he's got way more than that, and it's almost an insult to the rest of us with him looking so miserable. But if you think about it, number one, yes, he does have fame and fortune, and that's what everybody wants, right? But of course, it doesn't make you happy. He doesn't have to worry about paying rent. He doesn't have to worry about paying his bills. He doesn't have to worry about paying for his kid's school. He doesn't have to worry about any of that stuff, right? Okay. He seems to have his health. And in a few years back, when I started noticing that he always looked miserable, I thought for sure that he had a health issue. And I was talking to some friends. I said, I think that he's got a health issue that will come out because that's kind of what it seemed like, because he seemed always miserable. You see him in photos, he looked miserable. You see him in videos, he looked miserable. You see him with different people, he looks miserable. So I figured that had to have been it. And now, a couple years later, he's still like that. So that seems very unlikely, because with him being such a big star, it probably would have come out if he was dealing with some type of illness. It almost definitely would have leaked out. Nowadays, there's very few things that mega stars can do or be involved in that doesn't at some point even leak out as a rumor, even if it's not verified. And he's up there. He's a mega star. Whether you like him or not, he is a mega star. So you got to almost rule out a health issue. So you look around. He seems to have his health. He's got kids. His kids seem to be healthy. He's got an ex-wife who seems well put together and who seems to have always taken care of him. And on top of it, if you go back a little bit, he cheated on his ex-wife. So it's like, so even when you say, like, most guys will look at Jennifer Garner and say, hey, sign me up. Not Ben, though. Not good enough for him. So he's got 2 kids with her, cheats on her. He's still miserable. So you would think that she would say, well, to heck with you, get out of my life, I don't want anything to do with you. Not the case at all. Nope. She takes care of their kids. She seems to be doing a good job of it. Of course, we don't know, but they seem normal kids. And anyway, so she's raising the kids, and he's still miserable, right? And this is the thing. It seems like she's been taking care of him, and like I talked about in the other videos, where she's almost like his mom, because she's gotten him multiple times into rehab. She's looked out for him when he's been in trouble with when he went back and did dumb things, got in trouble with alcohol. She was always there for him. He's got in other relationships. Those didn't work out. He bounces back to her, and she's still there for him. So at no point it seems that she ever just dumped him off and said, hey, figure it out. She's always been there for him, by all accounts. She's always been there for him. So now we go, then he gets back with J-Lo. And of course, we talked about the fact that, hey, J-Lo's been controlling. She's a little bit crazy. She's putting the relationship out in public, which he didn't want. But again, he knew what he was signing up for. So you can't blame that of him being miserable. And then he doesn't like it. He gets out, right? So it's like, so he's like an overgrown child that just, he doesn't get his way. He moves on. And that's what he seems to be doing. But here's the big but. I think I've figured out the reason why he's always so miserable. My opinion, just my opinion. I haven't seen anything, read anything about this theory. I'm sure it's out there. I mean, I doubt I'm the very first person to think of this, but I'm not that naive. But anyways, It's not, I don't think it's really talked about, but this is the thing. Ben has had a history of alcohol problems, okay? And that's not a judgment. A lot of people do, and that's things that people deal with. And if you haven't dealt with anything, you probably have family that has dealt with things. And if you don't have family that dealt with things like that, you have friends who have dealt with things like that. So it affects everybody in every way. And we've all got our own issues somehow, some way, right? Whether it's alcohol, everyone's got issues, okay? So I'm not judging him on that. But this is the thing. He had issues with alcohol. And it caused problems in his life. Obviously, it caused problems in his, you could say, well, he was drinking to deal with, problems. Maybe he was. Maybe he's drinking to deal with the stress of Hollywood and the expectations, and maybe he's seen things in Hollywood that he didn't want to see. But maybe he's just a normal person who started drinking alcohol like a lot of us do, and it just took a hold of him, and he started drinking it more than he should, and then it got the best of him. Because don't forget, now you got a guy who's got a ton of money. He controls his schedule, so it's not like he's got to be up every morning at 7 a.m. like most of us do, and you got to report somewhere, and you got to be on time, and if you're not there, someone's yelling at you. So it's like, so he doesn't have all that. So you can see how that kind of spirals. So here's my point. So he starts drinking a little bit too much, starts causing problems in his life. Starts cutting, maybe, when he's married to Jennifer Garner, she's probably telling him, hey, you got to knock it off. You're drinking too much. You're doing too much. Maybe studio executives, we haven't heard that. Right? I don't remember ever seeing anything where he had issues with studios where they, where maybe he didn't show up to set, or maybe he wasn't prepared for his roles. I don't ever remember seeing anything like that about him. He's always seemed pretty professional when it comes to his jobs, but we don't know that never happened. It may have. Maybe they put pressure on him and said, hey, you got to calm it down, because he's been all over the the gossip sites where he's been stumbling drunk and falling over himself and slurring his words and kind of looking goofy, just being drunk. But he's a megastar, so of course there's going to be a camera there. Someone's recording him at all times. But my thought is this: he's been in rehab multiple times, and supposedly he's completely sober right now. Do we know he's completely sober? No. Do I think he's completely sober? Yes, I actually think he's completely sober, and I think that's why he's miserable. And I think he's miserable not because he chose to go to rehab. I think he's miserable because he was essentially forced to go to rehab. He was probably forced by his ex-wife to go to rehab. He might have been forced by his mom to go to rehab. He's close with his mom. He might have been forced by other family members or by his agent or studio executives to go to rehab, and he might have been forced to drink. Or he might have been forced to stop drinking. And he did. To his credit, he did stop drinking, and that's a tough thing to stop. Drinking like that when you're drinking constantly and it's an issue. That's a big deal, and that's hard to do. So I do think he's sober now, and I do think that's why he's miserable and unhappy, because I think he stopped drinking because other people wanted him to, and now he's just going through the motions of life. And we look at him, I look at him and I say, God, and a lot of people look at him and say, he's got everything that most people want. Like we said, he's got money, he's got fame, he's got people adoring him, he's got people just, falling over themselves for him. He's got healthy kids. He's got an ex-wife who's taking care of his kids, looking after him. He's got other relationships that people seem to care about him. It seems like everybody cares about him. Everyone's taking care of him. Everyone's looking out for him, and he's miserable. So that's why we look at him and we say, well, it's crazy. But for him, I think that he wants to crack a beer and drink some beer and kick back a little bit. For him, he's one of the people that can't have a couple beers and go back to it. It obviously it was an issue for him, or there's some reason why he doesn't want to go back, because maybe he did keep going back and it continued to be an issue for him. So that's my thought, and I'd be curious to hear what you think. in the comments. If you disagree with me, if you agree with me, whatever it is, I'm curious of other reasons why people. I'm curious to why you might think he's unhappy. I mean, to me, I think that seems obvious. Like when I'm looking at it, I'm like, okay, that's obvious. That's got to be why he's so miserable, because there's no other reason why he'd be so miserable. But if you got a different point of view, I'm interested to hear it.